labeling traditional Catholics as domestic terrorists to Catholics. We did very well with the Catholic vote, so I want to thank them for that. They imported, they really did, record numbers. I would say, what's with the Catholics? They're really after the Catholics, so I don't know. They were after a lot of people. Maybe they didn't even know why. They imported illegal alien murderers, drug dealers, and child predators from all over the world to come into our country while putting elderly Christians and pro-life activists on trial for singing hymns and for saying prayers. They went to jail for that. We created a brand new DOJ task force and anti-Christian bias. To confront such weaponization and religious persecution, today I'm signing an executive order to make our Attorney General, who's a great person, she's going to be a great Attorney General, PAM BONDI, the head of a task force, brand new, to eradicate anti-Christian bias. About time, right? Anti-Christian bias. Yeah, you never heard of that one before, right? But it's about time, isn't it, though, really? So many times you hear, but you don't hear the anti-Christian bias. The mission of this task force will be to immediately halt all forms of anti-Christian targeting and discrimination within the federal government, including at the DOJ, which was absolutely terrible, the IRS, the FBI, terrible, and other agencies. In addition, the task force will work to fully prosecute anti-Christian violence and vandalism in our society and to move heaven and earth to defend the rights of Christians and religious believers nationwide. You've never had that before, but this is a very powerful document I'm signing. You got it now. First time you've had it. If we don't have religious liberty, then we don't have a free country. We probably don't even have a country. We're restoring fair, equal, and impartial justice under the constitutional rule of law. They weaponize the vast powers of our intelligence and law enforcement agencies to try and thwart the will of the American people. There could be no more heinous betrayal of American values than to use the law to terrorize the innocent and reward the wicked. Now, as the chief law enforcement officer in our country, I will insist upon and demand full and complete accountability for the wrongs and abuses that have occurred.
A new task force launches in Washington designed to eradicate anti-Christian bias. What the group is looking for and how far it's prepared to go. The Trump administration's battle against anti-Christian bias begins. When President Trump signed an executive order to launch the task force on anti-Christian bias, he was fulfilling a promise made to millions of supporters. In that order, he promised to protect the religious freedoms of Americans and end what he saw as anti-Christian weaponization of government. The president appointed Attorney General PAM BONDI to take the lead role. She conducted a news conference with various cabinet members present to discuss eradicating anti-Christian bias.
Attorney General PAM BONDI hosted her first anti-Christian bias task force meeting at the Justice Department. She focused on efforts that are currently underway to end the bias throughout the federal government. The Attorney General PAM BONDI acknowledges the mission of the anti-task force and anti-Christian bias daunting but necessary in order to protect the inalienable rights of every American to worship God free of any discrimination. Members of the task force include Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and other members of the cabinet, also individuals who have been impacted by anti-Christian bias. Attorney General BONDI says they are focused on identifying unlawful anti-Christian policies, practices, or conduct taking place in government.
As President Trump has stated, the Biden administration engaged in an egregious pattern of targeting peaceful Christians while ignoring violent anti-Christian offenses.
Some of the anti-Christian bias offenses include arrest of Christians peacefully protesting outside abortion clinics. Bondi says the FBI even spied on some Catholic churches. Also, she cited President Biden declaring last Easter as a day of transgender visibility. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche says all forms of bias against any religion must be stopped.
Supporting the free expression of faith is not just a constitutional principle. It is something that all forms of civil government should be encouraging. At its core, the executive order we're here to talk about today affirms a fundamental truth. Every individual has the freedom to choose their religious faith. And once made, that choice should never be subject to discrimination or bias from our government.
President Trump's senior advisor, Paula White of the White House Faith Office, helped organize the president's observance of Easter. During an Easter dinner at the White House, he mentioned the task force.
We're standing up for a persecuted Christian and so many Christians that have been persecuted all over the world. So horrible what's happened. And defending religious liberty. We had nobody fighting for our Christians in other parts of the world that were being so incredibly destroyed, killed.
The Trump administration is making moves to eradicate what he calls anti-Christian bias. Several cabinet members were on hand for a strategy session at the Justice Department today. Correspondent Griff Jenkins is there tonight with the latest. Good evening, Griff.
Good evening, Brett. And this was the first meeting of a new task force aimed at eradicating anti-Christian bias.
The Department of Justice will protect religious liberty for Christians and for all Americans.
Created by President Trump's executive order in response to incidents under the Biden administration perceived by critics as anti-Christian, including the prosecution of nearly 24 anti-abortion activists who President Trump pardoned shortly after taking office, and an FBI memo that targeted radical traditionalist Catholics. That memo was later retracted by former Attorney General Merrick Garland.
Biden's Department of Justice abused and targeted Christians. Pro-life Christians were arrested and imprisoned for peacefully praying outside abortion clinics. The FBI spied on traditional Catholics in their parishes.
Attorney General PAM BONDI led the meeting with several cabinet members in attendance, including the State, Defense, and Homeland Security Secretaries and the FBI Director, detailing efforts to identify anti-Christian bias within their agencies, all part of President Trump's broader push to reshape federal policy on religious expression.
I proudly created the White House Faith Office and a brand new DOJ task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias. And there is anti-Christian. You don't hear about that very much, but there is anti-Christian bias.
And this won't be the last of such cabinet large meetings. The executive order required that the task force meet and report results within 120 days. Brett?
Griff, thank you.
Thank you all for joining us today. We're excited to be here for the launch of the task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias as outlined in the President's executive order. Joining me today are members of the task force and individuals who have been impacted by the anti-Christian bias. Together, this task force will identify any unlawful anti-Christian policies, practices, or conduct across the government, seek input from the faith-based organizations and state governments to end anti-Christian bias, find and fix deficiencies in existing and regulatory practices that might contribute to the anti-Christian bias. As President Trump has stated, the Biden administration engaged in an egregious pattern of targeting peaceful Christians while ignoring violent anti-Christian offenses. The president is right. Biden's Department of Justice abused and targeted Christians. Pro-life Christians were arrested and imprisoned for peacefully praying outside abortion clinics. The FBI spied on traditional Catholics in their parishes. President Biden declared Easter Sunday to be Transgender Day of Visibility. No longer. Vandalism against churches was 8 times higher in 2023 than it was in 2018. And it's at President Trump's directive, we ended those abuses at the Department of Justice on day one. We dropped 3 ongoing cases against pro-lifers and redefined the FACE Act to ensure that abuse would not continue and that American tax dollars were not used to support the weaponization of our legal system to target Christians. Just a few weeks ago, we convicted a man in Arizona for a plot to bomb Christian churches. The Department of Justice will protect religious liberty for Christians and for all Americans. We'll work closely with everyone around this table and take a whole of government approach to solving this problem and ultimately protect Americans' First Amendment rights. The First Amendment isn't just a line in the Constitution, it's the cornerstone of our American liberty. It guarantees every citizen the right to speak freely, worship freely, and live according to their conscience without government interference. Protecting Christians from bias is not favoritism, it's upholding the rule of law and fulfilling the constitutional promise. Thank you to President Trump. We have an incredible opportunity, all of us around this table, to protect the rights of all citizens from discrimination based on their religious beliefs. Now, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche has a few words.
Good afternoon, everybody. First, thanks everybody for coming and for members of the task force for being here today and for your commitment to this important effort. If you look around this table and the leadership that's here, I know that combined with our shared determination to establish sound, effective policies and to push back against any form of anti-Christian or anti-religious bias that has taken root within the federal government, this will allow us to carry out the President's executive order. I want to echo what Attorney General Bondi just said. Supporting the free expression of faith is not just a constitutional principle. It is something that all forms of civil government should be encouraging. At its core, the executive order we're here to talk about today affirms a fundamental truth. Every individual has the freedom to choose their religious faith. And once made, that choice should never be subject to discrimination or bias from our government. Now, unfortunately, over the past several years, we've seen troubling signs to the contrary. We have witnessed actions that suggest an underlying bias against people of faith, particularly Christians. This task force was created to make sure this never happens again in America. We will investigate what went wrong, uncover facts, and ultimately chart a path forward. So today, we're going to hear from individuals who will share their personal stories that reflect broader trends and challenges from the Biden administration's policies. Policies that, frankly, strip people of their inalienable rights. We're also going to hear from members of this task force about the ways in which anti-Christian sentiment may have shown up in their departments or their agencies. A key challenge that we face is a public misunderstanding of our form of government. We're a constitutional republic, not a pure democracy. And this distinction matters because in a republic, individual rights are protected even when unpopular. And misunderstanding this distinction allows our institutions and media to misrepresent our founding principles. Our government's purpose is to secure rights, not restrict them. Finally, I want to thank the members of the media who are with us today. We appreciate your attention and your presence for this opening portion of the meeting. At this time, we'll be moving into our internal discussions, and so if you would please make your way out, we'll then continue with the rest of our work in a closed session. Thank you very much.
The examples that each department's looking for, any new examples of the anti-Christian bias that you found at State Department or anywhere else?
To confront such weaponization and religious persecution, today I'm signing an executive order to make our Attorney General, who's a great person, she's going to be a great Attorney General, PAM BONDI, the head of a task force, brand new, to eradicate anti-Christian bias. About time, right? Anti-Christian bias. Yeah, you never heard of that one before, right? But
for good reason.
It's about time, isn't it, though, really? So many times you hear, but you don't hear the anti-Christian bias. The mission of this task force will be to immediately halt all forms of anti-Christian targeting and discrimination within the federal government, including at the DOJ, which was absolutely terrible, the IRS, the FBI, terrible, and other agencies. In addition, the task force will work to fully prosecute anti-Christian violence and vandalism in our society and to move heaven and earth to defend the rights of Christians and religious believers nationwide. You've never had that before, but this is a very powerful document.
You've never had. We only have a First
now.
Amendment, but we've never had that before. Like, we've never had. I can't believe
So
people take this
stupid.
man seriously. Okay, Tim, you can get through this. Breathe. Okay, here we go.
First time you've had it. If we don't have religious liberty, then we don't have a free country. We probably don't even have a country. I will always protect religious liberty.
But that's not true, actually. Just
Is there more?
one brand of Christianity.
There's more to this video?
And that is why
You can pause
today
it. He's gonna.
No, let's
I'm
just suffer together.
and really honoring a lot of people, but I'm announcing that I will be creating a brand new presidential commission on religious liberty. It's going to be a very big deal,
What does it mean?
which will work tirelessly to uphold this most fundamental
Why does
right.
he
This
sound
week, I'm
asleep?
also creating the White House Faith Office, led by Pastor Paula White. who
Oh
is
my
so
You can pause
amazing.
here because the
All right,
next video
follow it. Okay, yeah.
continues.
Can we just
that.
sit on? Oh my God! Look, can we just sit for a second on the stupidity, the utter nonsense that speech, if you can call it that, was? Oh my God! Oh
So
my God.
this falls in line with the Christian persecution narrative
Yes, the
that
American
white
Christian
Christians
persecution
have
complex, yeah.
made up
Yep.
because the Bible says that the world will hate you like they hated me, which can be very hard to come by when you are a white Christian in America.
really
when
hard. It's hard.
When every single president in our nation's history has claimed some form of Christianity,
Yep.
and Christianity has reigned supreme. So how does one become persecuted? Because Jesus also said they will persecute you like they persecuted me. And if you're not being persecuted, what does that mean? So they make it up. They literally just make stuff up.
Enter
I
God's
think-
Not Dead.
No,
The movie.
seriously. Like I grew up being taught that American Christians in America were persecuted, despite having never been persecuted as
That's
a
right.
Christian
No,
in
same.
America.
Same. 100% same.
Ever.
April.
I even my 7th grade year in public school, a neon bright yellow poster board, I cut out Jesus saves souls, and I plastered that thing on my school locker, and
You
I was
bold
like, come at
Christian.
me, atheists. I was ready. I wanted to be persecuted. And you know what? Only one person said something to me, and do you know what she said?
What?
She said, I like your sign. Zero persecution.
Okay.
Zero. Zilch.
Look.
I tried to be persecuted.
Okay, look. People think, here's the thing, right? A lot of people think that we're making this stuff up, and or they because they didn't grow up like how we did. And Janice, you're part of this world too, for sure. So I know that you're here. This book, this is called. I don't want to trigger people here. It's called Jesus Freaks: Voice of the Martyrs. This is volume 2. I have 1 and 2. This is a book full of stories that you read as a child, usually on the bathroom, about people who were bold for Christ who lost their life, and then you were confronted with the question. Would I do the same thing? And I'm not going to lie to you all. I remember vividly sitting on the potty, reading the book, and thinking,
You can tell you're a parent.
I know, I really am. So I'm sitting there and I'm reading the book and I'm like, what if I couldn't leave my family and get put in prison and tortured for 10 years? Am I really a Christian? Because that's what the stories are. Like, they're really intense stories. Now, to be clear, religious persecution happens globally. People of all different religious beliefs do get really persecuted, including Christians. Obviously, that's bad. But when you have a white American Christian persecution complex, it actually, like, denigrates real persecution, because to April's point, you walk around waiting for some radical gay atheist to pop out of the bushes and like tell you how you're a terrible person and like spit on you or something. I mean, dude, by the way, this is also a relevant or a current belief. When I went to the pastor summit hosted by Turning Point USA 2 years ago, they stood from the stage, pastors, and said that they're really afraid that Biden's going to put them in jail for being a Christian. Like,
Yep,
they
heard
really
that.
believe that. They believe that if Joe Biden got his way, he would personally kick down their door, throw them in prison, and feed them their Bible for dinner and lunch and breakfast. That's what they think. While they're standing on a stage next to millionaires getting applause.
Just think of how people lost their minds when Kamala Harris told hecklers that they were at the wrong rally, and they found this like clip from the back where you hear a guy being like, Jesus is Lord. Like, she hates Christians. She hates us. Like,
Legion.
Columbine. Do you remember Columbine shooting?
Yes,
After
unfortunately.
that, kids' churches, youth groups around the
Yes.
world were like, gunman comes into your school and
Yes.
says, do you believe in God?
Yes.
Do you say yes? And like, literally, I was trained. I'm like, I would say yes. I would say yes. Like, trying to train
100%.
myself to be a martyr.
By the way, that story is largely discredited. I mean, she lost her
Yep.
life, which is tragic.
Yep.
But the story
He was
of
not
her,
asked that question.
it was not a real thing.
But it's
And
again,
I do.
dumbest time. I don't know how people don't see
Yeah.
just the patterns we're repeating, the old stuff we're falling into. The government cannot be the arbiter of your relationship with God. The government cannot healthily have a religion and protect it.
Yeah.
You just can't. And as soon as, like, this should have been, I can see you like working and Christian nationalists believe it and whatever, but like as soon as the power flips and you have it, you are
Yep.
in danger. You're supposed to be giving that up. That
Yes.
is red flags, warning lights. And the fact
Yeah.
that people don't see it, that they are cheering for this, that's where I'm like, you're not, you don't know, you don't like the no true Scotsman and blah blah. But at some point we have to say, like, we don't believe the same thing.
Yeah,
We
right.
don't.
For sure.
We're
Definitely
not
not
on the
following
same
the
team.
teachings of Jesus. Like, Jesus never said, go into all the world and take over the government.
Yes.
Like, he was
That's right.
he was very anti-power.
Not a thing.
And like,
Yeah.
give up your power, give away your wealth. Like, the opposite of what a Christian nationalist is. But I do want to point out too, when they bring up
Yes,
Christian
perfect. Do it.
persecution,
Do it. Let's go.
it is
This is
a
so
dog
good.
whistle for accountability. Like, they have
this is so good.
conflated persecution with being held accountable for doing crappy things. Like, one story, the story that Trump keeps bringing up and that they're saying, like, to weed out this anti-Christian bias, was in the last year or so, there were some pro-life protesters who protested an anti-abortion clinic, and they said that because they were arrested, that was Christian
And put
persecution.
in prison, I think some of them, right?
Yeah, I think so. But they claimed, there's a one lady in particular that they bring up. She was an elder lady named Paulette Harlow, and they claim she was arrested for peacefully praying in an abortion clinic. But
Yep.
what she was actually doing was, her and a bunch of protesters broke in to the abortion clinic, barricaded the entrance so no one could get in. She chained herself to the
Yes.
other protesters so that they could not be moved by police. And then when police came and asked her to leave, she refused to leave. And they have making her this hero of Christian persecution when she just broke the law. And they also claim that there's some kind of bias against pro-life protesters, but the law that arrested them has also gone after just as many, if not more, protesters that protest pro-life clinics. But you don't hear about that story because that goes against the Christian persecution narrative. And it's the same thing. The other story that you hear about Christian persecution are Christian bakers that won't bake a wedding but won't bake a cake for a gay couple. But that is literally
100%.
just being discriminatory. That's not, like, if someone boycotts or sues you for not servicing them, that's because you are discriminating against them as a business, and you can be held liable for that. Also, how many cakes have you made for a Christian's second, third, fourth, or fifth wedding?
I need to tack onto this because this story about the abortion clinic thing it's even more bombastic than that, because that is completely true. So this is according to the HuffPost. I hope people are ready for what I'm about to read you. This is crazy. Now, I will say, a lot of people on Twitter, Christian nationalists, really presented this as like a clear case of Christian persecution, of government overreach, and were praising Trump. So here's what it says. 23 people who were convicted of illegally blockading reproductive health clinics under the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act received a pardon by Trump on Thursday. Now, okay, this is one of the stories. Her name is Lauren Handy. Handy called a clinic in D.C. and claimed that she was Hazel Jenkins, a woman who needed reproductive health care, and made an appointment for the morning of October 22nd, 2020. She and 8 other protesters met in D.C. on the day of the appointment, according to the indictment, and gathered in the hallway and stairwell outside of the clinic's front door. A staff member opened the doors to patients with scheduled appointments. So she lied to them, saying, I'm in need to get on the list. And members of the group forced their way through the doors and into the waiting room. One nurse stumbled as a result and sprained her ankle. According to the indictment, Handy instructed other protesters to move the chairs to block the doors to the clinic's treatment area. There, they tied themselves together with chains and ropes. One patient attempted to use an employee entrance to reach the treatment area, but was blocked by Handy's and others. Now, Handy was arrested on March 22nd. That same day, D.C. police found 5 fetuses at her home. She was storing fetuses at her house to give them, quote, a proper burial. And this is one of the people that Trump pardoned that pro-lifers are like, man, she was unjustly prosecuted. The woman had 5 fetuses. Now, if pro-lifers were consistent, and they saw these 5 fetuses the same way they would see, like a toddler or an adult. She had 5 dead bodies in her home. That's the story, right? Police found a woman with 5 dead bodies in her home. That's quite sus. So this is the story that causes Trump. That causes Trump to start the anti-Christian bias, yada, yada, yada nonsense commission, and then have Paula White lead up a faith thing inside the White House.
Yeah. It's not Christian persecution. These people are weird. They're doing weird things.
Well, they are
illegal
weird.
things.
They are weird. I want people, this is a little montage that you pulled. Who is Paula Kane? And again, Paula White Kane. Thank you. We can do a whole different video, which I think we will at some point in April, more of a deep dive. There's a lot to her. And in fact, I'll just say this to tease you. If you want to know where Trump came from, you can thank this woman right here. Without this woman, Trump never happens. Here's a little montage of the woman leading up this Christian faith office in the White House. Here we go. Just buckle up.
To say no to President Trump would be saying no to God.
We command all satanic pregnancies to miscarry right now. It is God that raises up a king. It is God that sets one down. And so when you fight against the plan of God, you're fighting against the hand of God. The Supreme Court justices, if we get 2 more, come on, if we get 2 more, and right now, I know right now, we are scaring the literal hell out of demonic spirits by me saying this right now, because if we get 2 more, we will be able to overturn demonic laws and decrees.
Never been hatred like this.
I've never
to
seen
a president.
It. Never in my life. Principalities cannot control this man because he surrounds himself with Christians. He is a Christian.
Have you ever asked God for forgiveness? That's a tough question. I'm not sure I have. I don't bring God into that picture.
Great ending there. She literally prayed over satanic miscarriages. Like, wait, so you are praying? Yeah, so you are praying for babies to be murdered according to your own worldview? Like, I don't understand.
Only if they're satanic, Tim.
They're satanic.
Right, my bad. Sorry.
Evangelicalism is terrible storytelling, right? And we get caught up in just these moments and just what we believe when we're fighting for that. And we don't just sit and think about it and think of a better way. I don't understand how people are not more offended at how stupid we pretend this amazing God is.
Yeah.
Like I'm taking an astronomy class right now, and like the first class was just about like orders of magnitude and how like quickly, how far out the galaxy goes, and how it just gets beyond our comprehension so fast. And I was just like looking at this picture of, you know, what we think the galaxy beyond us looks like, and I'm like, honestly, what's that old joke about, like, you know, I wouldn't want to be part of a club that would have me as a member. Like I don't want to be the subject of a God that would be that interested in me. Like, you've made all of this, and we are just this minute thing, and you are that fascinated with what's going on here. Like, God, don't you have better things to do? Don't you? You should be 15 galaxies down the road. And right, and just our fascination with ourselves and how important and special we think we are. Like, how do I know I'm the main character? How do I know it's not one of my blood cells? How do I know that's not what God is like trying to get at and trying to protect? Like, we make God so small to fit him into our boxes, and then we get ourselves just wound up in all these knots trying to fix and prevent things that are above our pay grade. And like, there are just so many better ways we could be thinking about things, and so many more like useful things we could be putting our energy towards and fixing. And always, right, with the abortion debate, it's always like, why are we not at least trying? Let's for 10 years just say, okay, everybody, all the abortions you want, but we're going to fix maternal health care. We're going to provide child care. We're going to have maternity and paternity leave. And like, let's try something else, because this forcing is not working.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. 100%.
But it's like, it's almost like it's not about the people, and it's just about the power and just having authority and control over others. I don't know.
I think you might be onto something there.